What is going on, everybody? Pick and Fights Tom here for OTH MMA, our YouTube podcast, still currently unnamed. Maybe one day we will figure out a name that will fit what we're trying to do here. I am here today with Justin Gibbons, Austin Marr MMA. Guys, how are you doing today? Justin, we'll pass it to you first. How you doing today, bud?
Pretty good, man. We're going to talk fights, so always great.
Absolutely. Austin, how you hanging in there?
I'm great, man. Ready to talk some fights.
Sounds good. I agree. Before we do that, everybody make sure you drop us a like. Give us a comment on the video. Let us know what you think of our picks, of our theories, of our thoughts. Have we led you to the promised land and gotten you some winners, or have you been tailing us and that been some winners? Any vice versa. Let us know how we're doing. And if you like the content, don't forget to subscribe. And, make sure you check us out over at overtimeheroics.net. We have all of your MMA content that you need from inside and outside the UFC. We're also with football, hockey, motorsport, a lot of sports covered. So go check us out on overtimeheroics.net. This week, guys, UFC San Diego being headlined by Dominic the Dominator Cruz, Marlon Chito Vera, two guys that have a lot of UFC experience. Chito Vera is a little bit more recent. Dominic the Dominator, it doesn't make any sense to me how he's been in the UFC for 10 years, but he's got 8 fights. He's taken 4 or 5 entire years off to recover from injuries. Justin, what are your first initial thoughts about Dominic Cruz and Chito Vera?
I think it's a good fight for both guys. Personally, I want to see that Jose Aldo versus Dominic Cruz fight. That's the dream fight I want to see. But to get to that, we got to see Chito Vera and Cruz, right? So it's going to be a good fight. 2 guys, different paths, but they led to each other. So it's going to be a good night. Good main event to have on this card.
Yeah, like Justin said, it's a great fight. Right now, initially, I'm leaning towards Marlon Vera. I can't believe in Cruz. It's he's too inconsistent between fights. It's too much time off sometimes, and just the way Chito Vera looked against Rob Font, he really put it on, and it had a great showing. And and I think it really matters that he went 5 rounds because you're going to need that cardio and that pressure to really get to Cruz.
Yeah, I agree with you. Marlon Vera, especially at the end of that Rob Font fight, he's getting up after the 4th round, ready for the 5th round, standing there looking at his wrist, being like, come on, dude, let's go. Barely showing any injury whatsoever. Rob Font looks like he's wearing a Halloween mask, just got through, makeup after basically he probably looked very similar to a lot of the villains after Batman just finished kicking their ass. You know what I mean? He's just bloodied, and I think he might have broken an orbital with the size of where his eye had swollen up to. Interesting, Justin, as you were talking about seeing Dominic Cruz versus Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo has a really tough fight coming up for him, I think, in 2 weeks against Merab Dvalishvili. That's a fight that I'm really looking forward to. I don't know how you call that. Aldo, of course, facing the top-level competition at 35. And then now you have Merab Dvalishvili, who's faced a little bit lesser competition, knocked out a guy in Marlon Moraes, who, frankly, is becoming the new Cody Garbrandt or the Luke Rockhold. You know what I mean? The whole gust of wind knocks him out kind of thing. I'm really interested to see how that goes. What do you? We don't get any of that. And personally, I think Marlon Vera is going to have the endurance needed, especially in the later rounds, to come on strong. But that's kind of a little bit of Dominic Cruz's MO too. So I think our first round and a little bit into the second round, being a 5-round fight, might be a lot of feints and trying to figure each other out. Not a ton of output. But Dominic Cruz, as he gets going, his footwork is spectacular. He usually doesn't find himself in places to be hit by his competition. And I'm just interested to see how Marlon Vera, his kicks and his big overhands are going to lend themselves to that. He's, throws a lot of elbows, a lot of creativity from both of these men. So interested to see what happens. I agree with you. I think Marlon Vera is going to win. And then, we'll see if Jose Aldo can, I think ultimately, if Jose Aldo loses to Merab Dvalishvili, that sets up that Dominic Cruz-Jose Aldo matchup as long as these 2 guys want to keep going. I think that's a little bit more likely than them both winning. But, Austin, what do you think about, those thoughts?
Well, speaking about Aldo and Merab I always butcher his name, Valashvili. I've got Aldo in that fight, so I don't think we'll ever see an Aldo Cruz fight after that. But I mean, that's about all I got to say. I just think Aldo, he's looked good recently, and I don't think Aldo's ready to take that step back. Like when I think of Aldo and Cruz, I feel like Cruz is more on the cusp of hanging up the gloves than Aldo. Aldo's still got that fire in him.
That's true. I mean, Aldo's looked as good as almost he ever had, a career resurgence, down there at the new weight class. But I mean, he also has, some not so great losses down there. It's not like he's without blemish. Justin, what are your thoughts on this upcoming matchup of Aldo and Merab, and as it relates to your dream matchup, Dominic Cruz versus Marlon Vera?
You got Aldo. I think he makes anybody better when he's in that cage with anyone. Like with Vera, Cheeto lost to Aldo, but at the end of the day, he's beat Davey Grant, he's beat Edgar. We talked about how he dominated Rob Font. So I love the Aldo Merab fight, but I honestly love that Cheeto lost Aldo because it's made him a better fighter. So I guess staying on topic, but
no, I agree with you. I think some of those losses for Marlon Vera have improved him. And it doesn't make sense, his chin at this point. I mean, he was getting a good plethora of shots landed on him by Rob Font, and he didn't show an ounce of it, and it didn't seem to affect him at all throughout the fight. The one thing I am a little bit concerned with Cheeto Vera is if he starts to get in a little bit of like the flow state where he can, start doing almost like the Cody Garbrandt fight with Dominic Cruz, where he can start like almost showboating in the middle of the fight because he's doing so well. Dominic Cruz is not a guy who I want to play around with, but we've also not seen Dominic Cruz have like one punch put away power in really a long time, if ever. So I think there's a lot of things that lend me to believe Cheeto Vera is going to have the edge in that one.
Who was it Cruz fought before he came back and he fought TJ? Who was that? I think that was his last finish win, wasn't it?
I think it was in like 2016. Yeah, that is sticking out. So he's got the decision win over Pedro Munoz.
Mizugaki,
I think. Win of Casey Kenny.
Mizugaki. Yeah.
Yep, Taika Mizukaki back in 2014.
That was a crazy win too.
Wow.
To come back like that. Oh man, I think I'm pretty sure it was a fight night. I just remember watching. I'm like, okay, Dominic Cruz is back. He looked really good.
And then took a year and a half off.
Yeah, gets injured again.
Gets a split decision win over TJ Dillashaw. Then is back in 5 months against Uriah Faber. Unanimous decision. Both of those were 5 rounds. Loses to Cody Garbrandt in 5 rounds. Loses to Henry.
That was crazy.
Early call, knees and punches. And then you got your 3-rounder over Casey Kenny, your 3-rounder over Pedro Munoz. So this is his first 5-round fight since losing to Cody Garbrandt. And it would be his first 5-round win in almost 8 years if Dominic Cruz goes on to get it done. So
I think this 5-round might actually kind of hurt him in a way, because he's getting he can point, he can get those like jabs and feints, like the pick and choosing of where he lands. But with Vera, he might, hey, I'm losing 3 rounds. I'm going to pull it. I'm going to push it to 4 and 5 and just violence, straight up violence, try and get that finish.
Well, the nuts thing about Dominic Cruz, like I said, he's 24-3, but only 8 or so of them have been inside the UFC. And let's look here. He was WC. His first UFC fight was 2011, and 2 of them were against Uriah Faber. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This was his 10th UFC fight. Cheeto Vera, on the other hand, while going pro a few years after Dominic Cruz, 21-7, has a few more fights, and in terms of like UFC experience, it's not even close. This guy's been in the UFC since 2014, 3 years after, won the Ultimate Fighter, and has been fighting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So let's just say I counted a little wrong in there. Say 20. So this guy has been in the UFC for 20 fights over the past 8 years, while Dominic Cruz in a very similar time frame has fought 8 times. Everyone wants to lend themselves to Dominic Cruz. He's got the experience. I'm not so sure, to be honest with you.
Well, and what is it? Cheeto, he's never been finished, right? So I don't
Dominic
think
Cruz
Cruz.
I think so.
I don't think Cruz can. I don't think Cruz has the power.
He's been finished by Henry Cejudo.
Who? Cheeto?
No, I was
No,
talking about Cruz. Sorry.
Cruz.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. So there's the levels are changing. Like it's like Cruz is coming down and Cheeto's rising. You know what I mean? Like the star power and like the skill level is deteriorating for Cruz. Age always wins, no matter who you are. It always wins. So I don't know. It's
with Vera too. Like I remember when he fought Sean O'Malley. You know, even though he got the win in that fight, coming out of it, I was thinking, you know, that didn't really prove if Vera is for real or not yet. You know, it's kind of fluky, kind of not in a way. I don't really want to say it's fluky now. I feel like a dummy, but still, like Vera, you know, he comes back and he finished Frankie Edgar, the performance he put on with against Rob Font. You know, it's like, okay, this dude is for real. And like we've talked about it before about how possibly Sean O'Malley could maybe match up again with Marlon Vera around, you know, later down the line. It's like, ooh, that's a bad fight for Sean O'Malley now. If it's Marlon Vera that I've seen these last 2 or 3 fights, it's like, ooh, no, that's terrible for Sean O'Malley.
He's a wild boy. I tweeted earlier in the week. I said he has like the attitude of a Diaz, and he's got the power of. He's got the power of, say, a Volkanovski. He's got the attitude of a Diaz, and he's got the durability of a 2004 Nokia flip. Like you could run over Marlon Vera with a tank, and I'm sure he would barely show a scratch. And because of his cardio and because he seems to get better and he's got those amazing kicks, I really don't like, even though Sean O'Malley will have that reach advantage, I really don't like the matchup, like you said. I mean, and we haven't
sorry.
I was just going to say, we haven't seen Sean O'Malley go the distance, especially not with the level of competition that Marlon Vera has. Sean O'Malley cherry picks, and good for him. You know what I mean? He goes out
and
there.
O'Malley was losing his last fight too, in my opinion. I mean, it was very uneventful, but based on the kicks that Munoz was landing, he was losing that fight because Sean O'Malley just wasn't landed.
That's another fight that I'm really upset that we didn't get to see finished. Before the show started, we were talking about Anthony Smith breaking his leg. We were talking about the early stoppage potentially with Derek Lewis. Pedro Munoz claiming the eye poke. That's another one that really irritated me because I don't know if you guys went back and watched it. I think it might have been the Weasel. I forget who exactly did the breakdown, but like he gets hit with a punch, and I believe it's in his right eye. After that, he starts wiping his eye. And then a couple minutes later, the alleged eye poke happens to his left eye. He's walking around trying to blink it out. His right eye, even though it's been stopped, for an eye poke to the left eye. Doctor stoppage. Oh, I can't see, right? Move on. He's now doing interviews, closing his right eye. Well, let me tell you this. Or maybe I got the right and the lefts mixed up, but the point still remains. He got punched in one of his eyes, and that was the eyes that he was continually closing and wiping and having problems with. But the doctor stoppage was technically for the opposite eye. That one really irritates me more than the other two. Anthony Smith, we found out that his leg broke, and it was a really unique break somewhere actually inside the ankle, the lower part of his leg. Doctor said he hasn't seen it in 29 years. So, hey, listen. Stuff like that happens. He still lost. Would have liked to see that fight play out. Derek Lewis, early stoppage. Would have liked to see that fight play out. Things happen. Pedro Munoz, I hold in a little bit of a different light because, dude, are you really being truthful? Are you really being a competitor when you say that, oh, I got poked in the eye, but the eye that you're complaining hurts and you're squinting and holding isn't the eye in which you actually got poked in? What do you guys think?
It's not like anyone's accusing him of faking an injury. Like, He might have got injured, but it was by a punch, not a poke, is pretty much what you're saying,
100%. I'm saying yes. It wasn't a doctor stoppage, and it shouldn't be a no whatever. I mean, he still gets the loss, right? Or did they rule that because it was so early in the fight?
I think it's a no contest.
No contest.
That I have a problem with. That I have a problem with because the reason he couldn't compete was because one of his eyes hurt so bad or was definitely
from a punch.
Affected, but it was affected from a legal strike, not from a poke to the eye. That's what I have a problem with.
Do the doctors have a role to play in that? Because this guy just got punched in the head. He might be a little damp. He might have said left or right. But does the doctor hold everything these fighters say accountable? You know what I mean? Like I think the doctors forget that these guys are getting punched in the face and in the head. They're not really all there. So he could have probably said right or left, and then the doctor, all right, let's just call it off. It's done.
I forget
what I mean? It's just
what fight it was, but it happened fairly recently, where the guy got poked in the eye, and they cover the bad eye, and they say, "How many fingers am I holding up?" And he says 1 or he says 2, whatever it is, and they move on. They let him fight. But like, there's a screenshot afterwards where you could see the guy, and the doctor's like holding his eye. He's literally looking at the guy's hand with this eye that they're covering up. They're covering up the good eye, right? So he's literally looking past the referee's hand or the doctor's hand at the number through the good eye. Like, at that point, I mean, like, I'm glad that it went forward and the fighter was able to compete because he wants to compete. There's a really, really thin line between protecting the fighter from themselves, but then also this person making a conscientious decision to finish what they started because, you know, whether they don't want to end the fight. And it's like, well, do you let them be reckless with their own body? It's their body. Who's to say what someone can do with or without their body, you know, with their body. At the same time, you obviously don't want the guy to lose an eye permanently. # Michael Bisping. So,
and then you run into problems with the commissions and the state athletic commissions and, you know, government agencies and all that. Then John McCain's going to rise back from his grave and he's going to be trying to shut down the sport again.
Well, it's crazy too. Like, hey, how many fingers am I holding up? The fans are either drunk at that point. They're going to be, it's zoomed in on the big screen. You know, they're going to be like 4, you know, like, and the fighter's going to believe him because they know they want to see a fight. So if it's a back and forth war.
You have their coach in the background going, it's 2, it's 2, it's 2, it's 2.
Yeah, right.
All right, fight.
Get in there. We spent all this money.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, and like what you were saying, Justin, like how much do the doctors take into account that person's just been hit in the head a bunch? I mean, you can't know until after the fact if it was a good decision or not. I mean, but if that fighter after, like, I feel like that has to be a conversation that the fighter has with the referee. Like, hey, listen, like, I want to fight. I'm in a right state of mind now. Like, I would like to fight versus somebody who would maybe be a little bit more tentative. But I mean, it's all theoretical. It just goes back to the job that these referees have. Like, you know, how many punches is too many punches to know that, all right, this guy ain't getting up. The fight is finished. Versus, you know, a guy like Dominic Cruz who can take a lot of punishment. And like how I brought it back, you know, full circle to our original.
Yeah, there we go.
Guy who can be finished, you know, or hasn't technically been finished. You know, the only time that he was finished, he popped right back up saying it was an early stoppage. You have a guy who you know is durable, can take punches, lose a round badly, almost 10-8, and then come back, win the remaining 2 in a fashion in which judges are going to rule him or give him the entire fight. But now he's 38 years old. He hasn't been in the octagon for a year and a half, 2 years. Like, how much rope are you really going to give that guy?
Well, it might be backstage because we don't know the conversation that going backstage. They could be like, hey, last fight, I gave you 4 or 5 more punches than needed. If I see that again, I'm stopping at like 3. If you don't show me, you know what I mean? Maybe they have those discussions in the back. I wish we could, you know, hear the referee conversations, you know, even record those, put it on a Fight Pass, you know, here we talked about this is, you know, people will pay for that kind of behind the scenes.
Mic'd up. The NFL does it all the time.
100%. Right. There we go. And I think we're onto something with this, and we'll email to the UFC.
Yeah. Well, and then here's the other thing too. Totally forgot what I was going to say. I mean, yeah, you couldn't have them like mic'd up in the back, but here's what I was going to say. I don't know how many of the referees have a podcast or what they can and cannot say. I know John McCarthy does, but he doesn't, you know, do reffing anymore, really. I would love to have like a podcast between like Mark Smith, Dan Mirigliata, and like Keith Peterson. Oh, and definitely
Beltran.
Mike Beltran.
Yeah. He took a punch in, I'm pretty sure the PFL.
Did he?
Pretty sure it's PFL. Well, not the one with Pettis, but I tweeted it out, but nobody really like got onto it. But if you watch it, he dives in and he takes like a shot. I think it's the Pfeiffer fight. Joe Pfeiffer.
Interesting. There was another ref who took a punch too, like was on his way in and caught like a ricochet shot or something too.
Herb's been pretty close a couple times.
Yeah.
I'm sure Herb has had a couple punches like directly like, thrown at him.
Yeah.
Like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean
leaving the cage.
Yeah, I didn't mean to sock you there. And like, yeah, that was for that last decision you called early on. Yeah, I would love to see a podcast between, a bunch of those referees and just let them shoot the shit and talk about, oh, well, I like to give this guy a little bit more reign. And I don't know where that would fall in terms of contracts and what they need to keep close to the vest versus what they can get out. But tell me that wouldn't be amazingly interesting. Get one of those between the 3 or 4 main referees from the following night's card, have it on a Monday or a Tuesday.
I would tune into that for sure. Because then they could even give you like, hey, this person said this in the fight, and you can't get that when you're like watching TV.
Absolutely. So with that being said, I know there was a couple other fights that we wanted to talk about on this UFC Fight Night San Diego card. First, let's talk about a little bit David Onama, or as Siri would call him, David Obama. Going up against Nate Landwear. I think that fight is definitely going to be fireworks. Nate Landwear throws total caution to the wind when he's striking, and David Onama has big power in his hands. Austin, did you want to talk about David Onama first, or should I pass to Justin first?
Sure, I can go.
Cool.
You already kind of spoke on it. Nate Landwear, he just throws caution to the wind, and David Onama is known for his power. So that's exactly why I've got Onama. I think Nate Landwear could survive one round, but I think he gets finished in the second for sure. But it will be fireworks. It'll be a fun fight.
For sure. And that makes sense why this is the co-main. Why they had Alexa Grasso in the co-main before she had to pull out, I'm not sure. We were talking a little bit about how they structure these UFC cards. This seems like the fight that you would put as the co-main, not, there shouldn't have to be a pullout in order to make this happen. Justin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it makes sense, right? It's when they put these cards together, it's kind of crazy that we have to be excited after a injury happens. So this is a good fight for a co-main event. This could even, I know it's not like they're not star-studded fighters, but it could even go a main event. Just how, like you said, Nate throws caution to win. But I think that's going to backfire in this fight. I think he's going to try to do what everybody expects him to do, and he's going to get clipped. If he just fought smart, I don't think he's going to get dropped nearly as much as he does.
Nate Landwear does have that win over Ludovic Klein, which isn't bad. It's definitely a quality competition. David Onama only losing to Mason Jones at this point in his career is a feather in his cap. I'm really interested to see it. But this is going to be a firefight. I like David Onama. We haven't really seen too many chin issues with him, and he's only improved every time we've seen him so far. So I'm going to stay on that train with him. Nate Landwear, not the guy that we maybe initially thought he was before he had this losing streak. Speaking of guys that aren't who we thought they were, after GM3 got knocked out in one punch by Khamzat Chimaev, I feel like a lot of the MMA, UFC community kind of wrote him off as like, okay, well, that guy sucks. While at the same time promoting Khamzat Chimaev, it doesn't make sense. You knock out a guy with one punch, and he sucks, but the other guy is great. Well, I feel like you almost have to pick a side here. And truth always comes out. So Khamzat Chimaev definitely doesn't suck. That war with Gilbert Burns was fantastic, and they might even they were thinking about rebooking that before they decided to just sacrifice Nate Diaz. But for GM3, we've seen him get a few pretty good wins of his own. Being a jiu-jitsu specialist, sometimes that can hurt him when he gets into striking battles or if he can't get the guy down. Most recent was his unanimous decision loss to Krzysztof Jotko. But he's going up against Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva's a minus 275 favorite, probably due to his ability to stand and strike and take Alex Pereira to a unanimous decision. But he's got a win over Jordan Wright, which is via punches, wins over Andrew Sanchez via punches, and he's got a win over Wellington Turman via punches. A lot of these guys, he's hitting the ones, going to the ground, and using his ground and pound to beat him up. But Wellington Turman hasn't turned out to be the best level of competition as we've seen. Artem Frolov, he's beat outside of the UFC almost 4 years ago. He has the win over Jordan Wright, which Jordan Wright hasn't looked a whole lot like a top-level contender. I think he's the Beverly Hills Ninja is what he calls himself. And then the win over Andrew Sanchez, yeah, he's got the win via ground and pound TKO, but when I go back and I watch Bruno Silva's fights, he does seem to have a very big weakness to the ground. And sometimes his fights go there. Now, to his credit, he's been able to get up. But I'm not convinced against the level of competition, a grappler that he's fought, that he's going to have that same experience with GM3. And GM3 stand-up has gotten better the more he's fought, he sometimes lands that right hand. He's shown he has the ability to stun guys, but he's a little bit like Paul Craig light, where he's going to strike in order to pull guard to get you onto the ground. He's obviously not as adept on the ground as Paul Craig is, but for those reasons, I think I see a hole in Bruno Silva, and I think I see an opportunity with GM3 being the underdog. Tell me why I'm wrong, guys. I'll pass over to Justin first.
I just hope for GM3 we don't see what Paul Craig pulled. He relied so much on his jiu-jitsu that he was just laying down and pulling guard. I think we might see a KO. I'm going with Bruno Silva on this one, just because who takes Alex Pereira to a decision? He took some shots, but he gave him back just as much. So I'm not sure if GM3's chin is going to hold up against Silva.
Yeah, you spoke on Bruno Silva's weaknesses, Tom, but and they are true. I believe they are, but I just feel like GM3 has bigger holes in his game that Bruno Silva can expose, and if he's going to land the shots on GM3 like he landed on Alex Pereira in their 3-round fight, GM3 is going to sleep for sure. I'm not saying the dude's chin's gone. It's just he can't take that shot like Alex can, and Alex is a great kickboxer. More so known for his offense than his defense, but for some of those shots to get through on Alex Pereira, they're definitely getting through on GM3, and I'm not convinced that GM3 can rely on takedowns and wrestling to get Bruno to the ground. He would have to go the route like a Paul Craig and pull guard.
For GM3, I think when he gets tired, he gets reckless, and I think if he's going to get clipped, he's going to try to come in for a takedown, and I think Silva's striking is going to be on point. And he's just going to push him off, or he's just going to, which will make Gerald more tired. But I think once he connects, it's going to be over. I don't know. I've seen him fight so many times, and I pick him, and then he loses, and then pick against him. He just gets knocked out too many times, and it's going to take some damage, right? Like especially in the high level young fighters like these guys that are coming up.
Yeah, and Bruno Silva is the first guy, at least in MMA, to take Alex Pereira. I know it's really small sample size, but still first guy in MMA to take Alex Pereira to a decision. And I guess kind of not fully, he lost, but to a certain extent, figure out that puzzle that is Alex Pereira. Listen, I've watched the GM3 fights. I've watched the Bruno Silva fights. For whatever reason, I have this gut feeling that Bruno Silva isn't as good on the ground. Well, he's definitely not as good on the ground as GM3. No one's debating that. But is GM3 going to be able to get him there? I don't know. I have this weird gut feeling that says he is. My gut's a liar sometimes. So
it's the beauty of the sport, man.
We'll see what happens. Going back to this card, we talked about some of the main fights. There's one more that I wanted to talk a little bit about. And I know it wasn't something that you guys particularly were sold on, but for me, looking at the entire card, especially and mainly the main card here, I think this is a good opportunity for Nina Nunes to get a surprising upset win over Cynthia Calvillo. And this is one that I feel, as an underdog, a lot better about than GM3. Nina Nunes plus 135, so not a ton of money to be made. But I feel like a lot of people are betting against her because she hasn't looked great in her last few competitions. But when you go and you actually dissect those fights, she's fought three grapplers back to back. Claudia Gadelha, she was able to eke out a unanimous decision and able to get up off the ground after Claudia taking her down. Tatiana Suarez took her down and dominated her down there. And then Mackenzie Dern. We know what Mackenzie Dern can do and did do, submission by armbar. I think it was in the first round of that fight. But Nina Nunes, in all three of those fights, and even the ones prior, has a significant striking advantage. There's a reason why those girls took her to the ground and took her to the ground early. Nina Nunes does not like being taken to the ground. That's your path to beating her. The thing about Cynthia Calvillo, I don't think Cynthia Calvillo is going to have that ground ability to take her down there. I mean, Nina Nunes, you got to figure that if she knows her weakness, she's probably training it a lot. She hasn't fought a ton. She's fought semi-recently about a year ago, but took 2 years off prior to that and then comes and steps back in against Mackenzie Dern. I mean, that's not fair. And the other thing that I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but Amanda Nunes just got out of camp. And by her performance and by her attitude, she took a lot of seriousness and pride with her into that training camp to make sure that she got her belt back. It was a rigorous camp. She said that she was sleeping on the floors. So that means either one of two things. Mommy duties has to be taken over by somebody. Was Nina Nunes also sleeping in the floor and they, gave the baby to maybe a parent to watch? Was the baby sleeping in the gym with them? Or was Nina Nunes back at home doing the mom life and now coming out quick training? I mean, what's the dynamic there? I'm going to bet a little bit because this fight was already booked. I'm going to bet that they kind of did a combined camp and Nina Nunes is going to come out, look as good as she's ever has. And I think Cynthia Calvillo, who's mainly a stand-up fighter, is in for a rude awakening. I'm putting some money on the dog here. What do you think, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, you've convinced me. I haven't put a whole lot of thought into this fight, I'll be honest. But you look at both of them. Cynthia Calvillo's riding a 3-fight losing streak. Nunes is 2, but the records aren't far off from each other. And if I'm going to take someone like you said, that's the better striker, I would definitely favor Nunes over Cynthia Calvillo.
And one last thing I want to add in there before I pass it over to Justin. Cynthia Calvillo quit on the stool after the second round against Andrea KGB Lee. KGB Lee is a good striker, but for Cynthia Calvillo to quit on the stool, and then I know the commentators, I think it was Mike Bisping, was like, oh, we need to see more of this. More people need to, not take unnecessary damage. Yeah, maybe. But also, what about the mentality of someone being like, yeah, that's enough. I can't come back and win this fight. I give up. I mean, I know we kind of saw that with Amanda Nunes after Juliana Pena, but mid-round she was going to get strangled. She was like, okay, I thought the Amanda Nunes kind of tap was more GSP-esque, and that's now backed up by her follow-up performance with Juliana Pena, where I don't want to take unnecessary damage, as GSP would say. I don't think that that's the mentality with Cynthia Calvillo. The body language didn't exude that. She's on the stool, her head's down, and, do you want to go? And she said, no, I'm good. There's a doctor right there. Listen, I get self-preservation, but in terms of having that fighter's mentality, it doesn't give me a lot of confidence. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, perfect. She is a perfect example of how this sport is 100% mental. It's physical. Well, we won't say 100%. There's like some physical, right? But it just shows like she was destined to be that like great next fighter, right? Like it was her that was up on the stage with like Dana White, like putting his arm around her at one point. Like she was winning some fights. Like she was the next big thing. And then I think she might have, when she started taking losses, she's like, hey, I believed into that hype maybe a little too much. And now she's not winning and it's taking a toll. Maybe she's mentally not ever going to be there again. I'm not sure, but it's tough to see when there's like the next big thing just keep going downhill.
And the fact that she's a favorite, I wouldn't have a lot of confidence, taking that hit on the buying price for Cynthia Calvillo this week. I think Nina Nunes by decision is where I want to put my money. But the only thing that makes me concerned about that is, again, is Nina Nunes, if she's beating the crap out of her after the second round, is she going to see a repeat?
I hope she doesn't quit again. It's kind of it's tough to see. Especially in the day and age with like social media, the memes don't help, right? If she really wasn't feeling it that day, like how many times have we shown up to our jobs and be like, I'm not feeling it today, I'm kind of gonna phone it in, and she did that night, right? And we don't know the difficulties of like her home life, or she might have got kicked out, right? Yeah, it's crazy.
Austin, what are your you got any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no shame, but I would say, if Calvillo was to, wilt and kind of quit again or something, I don't want to call the girl a quitter, but, then it's time to hang it up and move on to the next step of your life. There's no shame in it, whenever everyone's got their time where their time's up. So,
yeah, I hear you. Last one I want to go over on UFC San Diego. That's going to be Devin Clark versus Azamat Mirzakhanov. Mirzakhanov coming in at 11-0. But you can see a very, very stark difference in body types for Mirzakhanov outside of the UFC, and then once he gets to the UFC. Add into the fact that this guy had popped he actually had a nice knockout on the Contender Series, and then that was overruled to a no contest after he popped for steroids. And then actually you know what? Nope, wrong guy. And forget I said that. Sorry, I put that on you. Azamat Mirzakhanov, I will say though, has a starkly different body type outside of the UFC than he does inside the UFC. But he has shown against Tafon Nchikwi, which is his first UFC fight, an ability to finish somebody with a flying knee in the third round after being dirt tired following the first. I like that a lot. He's a big KO artist. That was actually the first time his fights have left the first round. Against a guy in Devin Clark, he's got a win over William Knight. That fight was fought at heavyweight, and I think he took it on short notice just to be able to fight somebody. Listen, I go into that fight. I bet on William Knight because I was so grossed out by Devin Clark's bottom teeth getting separated from the lower part of his jaw at the end of a second round, asking his dad, like, hey, what do I do? And his dad's like, what do you want to do? The damage is already done. He was, all right, cool. I'll go out there and fight again, which is absolutely nuts. That happened against Jan Kutalaba. That's not a guy I want to go out there with, teeth rattling around in my mouth. All of that being said, Jan beat the crap out of Devin Clark, and then he comes back and fights William Knight, William Knight was huge, and not in a good way. I mean, guy's 5'9", fighting at 255 pounds of solid muscle. Yeah. It's not like he's the fastest guy. He can get hit, and actually he had hurt Devin Clark early on in that fight. I'm torn here, but I think I'm going to have to side with the undefeated Azamat Mirzakhanov. Justin, do you have any thoughts on that fight?
Yeah, for me, I always pick against Devin Clark. Like I pick William Knight. I'm not sure why I always pick against Clark. He seems like he's got it, all the pieces, and once he starts losing, I'm like, why did I pick against this guy? He's great. He's a great fighter. But I think I'm gonna go with him again. He dominated William Knight, even if it was at a bigger size. So somebody's always got to go, right? So if Devin Clark could be the guy that gives that guy his first loss, that's a big win for him.
And the other thing for me about Devin Clark is he throws a lot of straight shots, whereas Azamat Mirzakhanov throws a lot of looping shots. So if he can get that left hand followed by a right cross, that's what really got him into the UFC off of the Contender Series. Azamat's got that one punch stark power. So, I mean, we're kind of betting, does Azamat land on Devin Clark hard enough over 3 rounds with that overhand left? And he's landed on everybody up until this point. So.
And Clark's bigger too, right? He's like a little bit taller than Azamat.
Yeah, Devin Clark is definitely going to be the bigger guy. He's going to have the reach advantage. He's going to have the height advantage. But that's not new for Azamat Mirzakhanov. When you're 5'10" and you fight at you fight at 205, you're going to be the smaller guy a lot of the time. So he's used to that. Also, he's fighting out of New Jersey, my home state.
There it is, right?
with a guy like a name like Azamat Mirzakhanov, with all of those consonants, V's and Z's, the last place you would expect is Italian Haven, New Jersey. But that's just another little niche going for him, in my book at least.
Who knows what Clark took away from that William Knight fight too, right? He was supposed to lose. Anybody that fights William Knight is supposed to lose, just based on like the look, like. William Knight's exactly. He's a superhero. That's the guy they want to promote. That's the guy they want on the posters. But Devin, he's a spoiler fighter, right? He spoils those wins. Like, was it him that fought? Mike Perry? I can't remember.
Devin Clark.
I wouldn't say so. I'd say he'd be a lot bigger than Mike Perry.
Yeah, at 6 foot.
I keep mixing him up with who is it? I always mix Devin Clark up with another guy.
Well,
was it?
He does have a win over Alonzo Menefield, which is pretty impressive. But that's about the only impressive win that he's got up until.
And he's also got like KO losses to Alex Nicholson, in the UFC.
Who was that?
Guillotine choke by Ryan Spann.
Max Griffin. I don't know why I mix Devin Clark and Max Griffin all the time.
I don't know, but either way, I think when you start to dig into these fights on this card, there's a lot of it really intriguing matchups, even if the name value isn't there, the recognizability factor. And hopefully for the people watching, and we were able to spark a little bit of interest in this upcoming card. I think UFC San Diego does have a lot of good fights on it.
Best example is look at last weekend's card. I feel like it was very slept on, and look how those fighters delivered. I mean, just all finishes. It was a banger of a card, and like everyone talks about UFC Austin being maybe the best card of the year, or the first UFC London. Like that last weekend's card was right up there with it. So San Diego has all the making to do it too.
Yeah,
I feel like the people who decide it based off name value.
They do.
And they rarely go back after the fights and amend it and go, oh, actually, this was one of the best cards. Like if you get labeled as a bad card, 2 weeks before the card starts, the odds that gets changed and people are going to go back and be like, yeah, I know we said that was going to be bad, but it was actually phenomenal. That doesn't happen much. People just remember, well, that was a shitty lineup. And then afterwards, someone will be like, yeah, but it ended up to be good. And that's all you hear about it.
That's it. Yeah.
I mean, it's the fight business and it's all about hype. So speaking of hype, negative hype, Brandon Moreno, I get he wants to be a good role model to his kids. But dude, build a fight. We
talked about this last time.
Figueiredo walks in there holding the belt up, all intimidating, ready to get into a verbal altercation. Talk to your kids later and you're like, yeah, you know what? Like, it's a little bit of acting. Daddy has to do this so that people are interested to buy the fight. Tom Cruise isn't actually a fighter pilot, even though he can fly a plane. There's things that you got to do. Like, oh no, I want to be a good role model. Yeah, well, that doesn't interest me. Like, let's talk some shit.
Sports need both of those guys. You need a Joker and you need a Batman for sure. You need the honorable guy. You need the shithead that's going to
You could be Alex Volkanovski if you're going to be the honorable guy who still gets me excited about fights. Yeah, I'm going to beat him, but he's a good fighter. Like that, okay. Like a little bit of trash talk. He's doing it humbly. Like I can get behind that. Like, no, we need to represent. Bro, like I'm not here for your TED talk. Like I'm here to watch the fights. I want some bad blood. I want a little bit of beef. Justin, you look like you disagree with me.
A little. I'm old school though, man. I've always been like this trash talk. Well, I'm a huge Tito Ortiz fan, so I love the trash talk.
Look at his background. We should have told him to hide that.
Yeah. But yeah, I love the trash talk. But at the end of the day, the older I get, the more respect I have for the sport of. I don't need that. I love it, but at the end of the day, they're not gonna talk when they're fighting. It's gonna be who can punch whoever in the face the most and walk away with the title.
Have you ever watched Khabib fight? Ever watched Kevin Holland fight? Oh, they'll talk when they're
fighting. But he wouldn't be talking if people look at Conor. He only talked to Conor because look how much Conor talked before the fight.
Conor talked, yeah, exactly.
And Michael Johnson talked a lot before the fight. He wasn't talking. He wasn't talking to the laptop guy salesman that he beat up when Tony pulled out, right? Yeah. He's like, thank you for taking the. That was right. He was being nice to the guy. So I don't know. My mindset's changed. I love the trash stuff. I love the lead up. Like I love the Colby's talk. You got to be good at it. I don't think these guys are good at it. And why try to be something they're not? I think it would just look worse than if Colby or Conor did it.
One of my counter arguments is like, if guys are forced to trash talk, it comes off cringy. It just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Like, Colby and Jorge, no doubt their bad blood is for real. But like the way they talk smack, I'm just like, this is awful. Like I feel like I'm in the high school gym and it's like two guys that want to fight each other, but they don't want to at the same time. And they're just going to sit there and talk smack. And it's like none of it's good insults.
That's a really great point there, both of you. With like the genuine nature of where that trash talk has to come from. Conor McGregor, when he was talking shit, you believed every single word, whether he did or didn't actually mean it. But Colby Covington is a perfect example of somebody who maybe I don't believe his trash talk, but I still want to see it. And Brandon Moreno probably isn't going to have a lot of really good trash talk because that's not who he is. It's going to come off disingenuous. And, then I would be sitting here criticizing him for the opposite side. Like, oh, like, why does he try to be not?
Well, and the other guy, he needs a translator to Figueiredo needs a translator.
They never do. See, here's my thought. If I didn't speak English, I would go to like Vince McMahon and be like, hey, I need a translator. I need to have somebody talk for me, and I'll say like the gist and then have that guy make it like,
That would be actually pretty cool, man. I would love to see that.
Like, oh my God, I wish Charles Oliveira spoke English. I wish Charles Oliveira spoke English because he might be one of the best talkers in the UFC. He just doesn't speak the language that's conducive to like popularity from that.
You know, I just had a thought
it's
too.
working for him, though.
Michael Chandler, you know, great guy, very honorable dude, but like his trash talk, I don't know why it just bugs me sometimes. I love Michael Chandler.
I don't mind it anymore.
Well, see, I love him and I love everything he stands for, you know, everything he represents, but just some of his trash talk, I'm just like, he's hit or miss. It's like, okay, that was okay, but then sometimes it's like, he's trying too hard.
Exactly. He's never done it, but you can tell the guys that are like fluent in trash talk, you know, they've been on those sports teams where it just comes natural, you know. You have guys that, you know, you're around it every day. But I don't think he's ever been around that type of lifestyle to, you know, trash talk, right? To that extent. So it does come off cheesy.
I got to push back on both of you guys. I thought his post-fight his post-fight interview after the Tony Ferguson knockout.
Oh yeah, those are hype. Yeah, for sure. But I'm talking about
that's off a feeling though. That's not
right. That's emotion.
That's the adrenaline kicking in. It's not like he's sitting on a pot, right?
Stupid enough.
Exactly. That's pure emotion, and you know. But if it's script, he seems to be scripted when it's like podcasts or interviews and stuff like that. It doesn't feel real. But
I'm gonna go ahead and plug one of my articles that I did a couple months back. But when him and Dustin first started smack talking on Twitter, you know, he said something like, he was like, it was a video and he was holding his phone. He was like, come here with me for a second. And he's like,
I love that.
And then he shoves him in like a cooler and he's like, no one gives a crap about your something. I don't know. It just went on. I was like, I don't even know what you said, man. I can't even remember now. Like I can remember almost every single one of Conor McGregor's barbs or Chael Sonnen's barbs, but can't remember that.
Yeah, but you remembered it a little bit, which is more than you can say for 90% of people on the roster.
I remember how cringy it was.
Yeah,
well, that sells too.
I mean, it sells. Look at Colby Covington. 80% of him's cringe.
Well, and I feel like Colby was pushed into it. You know what I mean? That's the thing that sucks about him is he had a great start of his career. He looked good when he was fighting, but you get forced into a business, you know, like Tom talked about, he loves it. So there's guys that like, there's thousands of people that love that trash talk, and Colby's going to get cut if he doesn't do it. Right. He doesn't hate on Brazil. Right. So allegedly. Yeah. But it sucks that a good fighter has to now focus on a different aspect of a fight to, you know, sell tickets, which, you know,
has that not always been the case though?
It never used to like
boxer. But he had the you know, amazing quotes and interviews to go along with it. It's just like, it's like you want a guy to come along that has all of the pieces. There's a lot of guys who are fantastic fighters, but like we're talking about, can't do anything on the mic. And then you have guys like Ian Gary who are good fighters, but do not have the mic ability whatsoever, but think they do. And then you have guys who have a fantastic mic ability and we're waiting for and almost hoping and pulling that their in-ring skills come to fruition. I think of Kevin Holland, you know, after he took those couple losses, I love Kevin Holland on the mic. I mean, he is just such a genuine dude. He's genuinely funny. He, can insult people. That's a guy who's clearly been around, like, you know, probably has like either older brothers, been on sports teams. Like he knows how to talk shit and go back at you. Think about Mike, Iron Mike Tyson, like amazing intensity when he talks on the mic. He ain't no Alexander. I'm Alexander. I'm going to get your kid. Like, what? Like, that's nuts.
I'm going to eat your kids.
Like that Hamzat Chimaev, I killed them all. Like that stuff that like gives you chills. Like that's what you look for. And I think the UFC needs to get a couple more of those guys. We had Israel Adesanya, and then his fights have been lackluster. I know he wants to keep the title, but it's really hard to talk about, you going out there and taking the guy's head off, and this is going to be a masterpiece, and then going out and point fighting to a win. I understand you're trying to win. That's your ultimate goal, and more power to you, but don't talk like you're going to murder the guy and then set everyone's expectations here and then come in with a fight that's here. I don't know. I think we need a couple guys that need to put it all together.
Y'all ready for a hot take? Paddy Pimblett's going to be one of those two.
You talk about cringe to me. I don't.
No, not cringe. He's Mike skill is great. Love him. But I just don't think he's going to be the total package. He's a top 10 guy. I'll give him a top 10, but I don't think he's ever going to win a title. I don't know if he ever fights for a title. That's my thing. So kind of like a little bit better than Kevin Holland when you compare them, but not like you said, you just made me think of it when you were talking about, the UFC wants the total package guys where, oh, he's so great on the mic, but can he perform to that level,
Well, it's interesting you brought up Kevin Holland because Kevin Holland is a guy who was at 85, not really caring what he ate in between camps, and then he started to get the losses, especially because of his wrestling. But I also think that when he came back at 170, he has a nutritionist. He's much more dialed in on that outside the cage things. And you could not convince me that doesn't have a correlation. Maybe 170 is better for him and his frame and his style. The guys aren't as big or as strong. They can't get him to the ground as easy. But also he's much more in shape. He's got that nutritionist, and he doesn't have the weight fluctuations outside of camp.
And he has a goal, and it keeps him motivated.
And I need Paddy Pimblett to assume a little bit of that, but as he keeps going, because that those fluctuations, I haven't seen much. I haven't seen videos of him being 300 pounds following his fight yet. So maybe he is taking that advice. Maybe he is like, yeah, I need to I can have fun, but I also need to keep it within.
Right. You see most of these champions, they have fun for what, a weekend,
right?
And then they're right back in it. That's it.
Right. It's hard to see too, like with social media being there, right? You can't really have the fun. You can't do anything really when you're a fighter nowadays. It's hard to live life. You are that image of what you just created, and you can't live outside of that ever.
Yeah.
Like Paddy can't gain some weight. He had a great fight. He can't go eat that cheeseburger he's been dying for because people are going to be on, they're just going to be like.
Up until now he did, and he didn't give a shit. And imagine how much better he could be. I mean, he gets dropped a lot. Imagine if he didn't have to cut that weight, and he came into healthy. And now you can just focus on your gas tank and improving the little things instead of like, oh, no, we got to dedicate these 2 weeks to you cutting the 30 pounds of fat that you gained in between camps. Yeah. What could that time be better allocated to is my point.
And it's also proved, too, that it bothers him, that fans and media have pointed out that his weight gain after fights, because look at him, during the weigh-ins, he pulled his whole ass cheek out and told everyone to kiss it because they didn't think he was going to make weight. So that obviously proves that it does bother him that people talk about it.
With him getting dropped, how he does, could that be because of being dehydrated all the time, like cutting all that weight? It's hard to see these fighters. They have everything, but it's like you're not really helping yourself by living that lifestyle, right? There's a choice, there's two paths. You got to either choose, you want to be a champion and you do this full 100%, or you can half-ass it, get a few wins. Like look at Sean O'Malley. He could take a few losses, but at the end of the day, he's going to get the merch. He's going to get the Instagram followers, But I'm just some people nowadays, that's all they care about, right? They want that money outside, right? They want that image. They want their image that they've created to be bigger than their fighting, right? And hey, if everybody loves a fight, you put that on at a bar or whatever, there's people watching all the time. So it's tough to see, right? Like it's who knows where Paddy wants to go. He has all the keys he wants, but it's up to these guys to choose the right path, right?
Absolutely. One last, we'll take a question from the chat. Would you guys fight GSP for $150,000? Absolutely, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I would like to pay off my student loans. That's the first and foremost reason. The second reason is because you picked a guy who was genuinely nice, and he was going to be like, okay, I understand. I know you don't have. My French is not that great. He's like, I will not stand and strike with you. We will do some grappling, and I'll get tapped out in like 20 seconds, probably sooner. And I'll walk away with my stacks of cash, and I'll take GSP out to dinner, and it'll be a grand old time. Now, if you said, would I fight a guy like John Jones for $150,000? No, absolutely not.
Well, he'll be nice to me. The details need to be there for me. Like, if it's just going to be a pure MMA fight, then yeah, I'm just going to let GSP just fucking dump me on my head and get a rear naked choke and call it a day. But if it's like, like you said, if it's a different fighter or if it's a stand-up fight, like if you tell me like, no, it's got to go, like you got to fight him for 15 minutes. Like he's not going to finish you. He's just going to wear on you for 15 minutes. Then No, because that's not going to pay my damn doctor bills after I'm done. Even though I would
Unless
love
you live in Canada, man, I'll take that fight.
Oh,
I live in
yeah.
Canada, so
Yeah, but then you're
I'll take that free healthcare.
like $60, right?
Yeah, I'll take the free healthcare any day. So
Well,
yeah, sign me up for anybody.
I would say too, though. I mean, it'd be a hell of an honor to get my ass whipped by GSP too at the same time. So
I would try to point fight him. I'd probably just kick him in the legs and then try to run around as much as I could before the end of the round, right? Just make a name, right? Fans will remember that.
Yeah, I'll scale the wall like Peter Parker did in Spider-Man 1. Just hang out up there. Like, come on, fight me. Be like, yeah, buddy. All right, guys. Well, with all of that being said, I just want to thank everyone who has sticked around to the end or came in incrementally. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you drop a comment, give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe to OTH MMA. Check us out on overtimeheroics.net if you haven't yet for coverage on combat sports, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, motorsport, and more. Make sure you follow us at our Twitters. We got Austin Marr MMA, at Pick and Fights Tom. Justin, do you want to tell the people where to find you on Twitter before we head out?
Yeah, just search Justin Gibbons. I'll be on there.
Okay. Well, we told them where to find us. We told them about the fights. Now it's up to them to go and watch. Thank you guys so much. And
just find the number one Tito Ortiz fanboy, and you'll find Justin.
Yeah, that's a different show, man. That's a different one.
Take it easy.
See you.